kintsugi, the interesting thing about it is that the literal translation means to repair with gold. And when you repair with gold, what we're doing is we're shining light on the things that would typically be considered flaws. And instead of looking at them as flaws, we can look at them as gifts. We can look at them as memories that have made us who we are, that have given us a sense of character. And this comes from the Japanese philosophy of what is called Wabi Sabi. Now, Wabi Sabi is broken down into two parts. So Sabi is, we're going to start with Sabi, because Sabi is about having a quality of loneliness, or said differently, a kind of reclusiveness, or almost this isolation, which kind of sounds a little bit disheartening when you think about it in isolation. But Wabi Sabi is a really interesting way of looking at it. So Sabi being that it has this quality of loneliness, this quality of privacy and reclusiveness. What it's saying in that regard is that the human experience is a really interesting one, being that we are around billions of people. We're sharing this planet with billions, and not just humans, but we're sharing it with other life forms. We're sharing it with animals, plants, and in that, we still have our own very individual subjective experience. So the quality of life is that we are experiencing this through our own perception. I'm not seeing myself through your eyes right now. I'm seeing this camera, I'm seeing this studio through my eyes, and you're watching me through your eyes. So we're having our own individual perspective, our own subjective experience of this reality that we seem to share. And Sabi is basically pointing to that. It's pointing to this individual reality where it's just you seeing through your own perception, experiencing your own memories, your own unique perspective. Now, Wabi is this quality of unpretentiousness, of embracing imperfection. So Wabi Sabi is embracing the imperfection of the individual experience. It is realizing that in this individual experience, you are not, it is realizing, I'll put it this way. The individual experience is one that, when we think about it from a Stoic view, it is a fragile and very temporary experience. When we talk about the whole concept of memento mori, which we've mentioned on several podcast episodes in the past, this is the quality of realizing that we are mortal, that we are going to die one day. And it's important for us to meditate on that mortality in order to put things into perspective. Now, bringing this back to Wabi Sabi, it is the embrace of the individual, very temporary, very fragile experience. All right, as human beings, things that we love, people that we love, even ourselves, can be gone in a flash, right? From one moment to the next, it can be all taken away. And oftentimes we forget this when we start getting involved into trivial matters, when we start getting wrapped up in our past, let's say, right? Where instead of repairing it with gold, we're thinking back on why it was so horrible and why it made us, or blaming it for why it's making our suffering what it is today. But instead, we can look at the fragility of life. We can look at the temporary nature of life, its transience, as something that actually gives it meaning. And when I think of Wabi Sabi, I think of this whole idea of people will often disenchant themselves or create a disillusionment of life by asking questions like, well, if life is just going to end, then what's the point? If none of what I do today is going to matter in 100 years or a million years or whatever weird frame of reference somebody wants to give it, then what does it matter? And it's very like, to that, I always counter it with the question, is a song pointless just because the song ends? And the answer is no. In fact, the song actually has meaning because it ends, because it's in this temporary few minutes, like a few minutes of a window, that you're actually able to listen to what the artist has composed. You don't see, I mean, I'm sure some people do it because you see these videos on YouTube and whatnot, but if you really love a song, it's much more pleasant and enjoyable to listen to just the song than the 10-hour loop on YouTube, right? That doesn't really have a lot of meaning, and that gets old really quickly. So when we think about the temporary nature of our lives, the imperfections of what life is, and the fact that it ends eventually, the fact that it's fragile, that it can be dashed at any moment, and we think about this subjective experience where sometimes we do really feel alone in what we're experiencing. when we think about all that, part of what gives it meaning and part of what makes it beautiful is the very fact that it is temporary, that it is imperfect. So when you're living a lifestyle of Wabi Sabi, this whole idea is that you are embracing the imperfection and actually not looking down upon the imperfection, but instead of looking down upon the imperfection and kind of allowing it to make you miserable or allowing it to cause suffering and nihilism, instead of allowing it to do that, what you're doing with it is looking at it and saying, okay, because this is temporary, this is why it's beautiful. This is why I have so much to be grateful for. This is why I really want to appreciate this and live in a way that puts my best foot forward and brings the most meaning and enjoyment into my life. And that is using Wabi Sabi as a philosophy for life and as a way of looking, again, at your past so that you can use kintsugi to look at your past experiences and repair them and line them with gold rather than simply look at them as something that you can regret. And a lot of people, they try to hide their flaws. They try to, look at the flaws of others as a way of diverging attention away from themselves, or they try and repair it in a way where they're hiding, or they put a big elaborate thing covering up their vulnerabilities. And that's not the way to live, because in that way, when we end up doing is we end up hiding ourselves from the world. We end up losing ourselves in an attempt to hide what we have felt shame over. And instead of feeling shame, what we could do is we can choose to learn from it and ask ourselves, what is the gift here? What is the gift in this experience of my past or of my present? And how can I use it now and in the future to carry myself forward into my life in a way that I would, find meaningful, in a way that I could be proud of the person that I am, in a way that I could look at the entirety of my life and embrace who I've created myself to be. Now, one of the reasons that these philosophies are really important, right? This idea of lining your flaws with gold and embracing your vulnerabilities, as well as embracing a lifestyle of Wabi Sabi, where you are embracing the imperfections, you're embracing the humble parts of your... Now,